Okay, Cat Ships 2, the second Cat Ships video. I'm putting this out quickly because Pepper has a lot of upcoming doctor's appointments, and I'm not sure how much time I'm actually going to have to work. Wish him luck with his maybe surgery? So we're about to judge some cat ships. Like I said in the last one, these are just opinions. I am not in charge of which ships are good or bad. Sometimes I have reasons for disliking a ship that is rooted in how related the cats are, or how one cat would treat another cat, but don't assume this means that the person who suggested the ship is a bad person. They could be unaware of some element, they could be thinking about it in a different context, or in an alternate universe. Please be kind in the comments and assume the best of everyone. If you like a ship that I don't like for any reason, I do not have a problem with that. And it's warrior cat shipping and it is not serious. You cannot glean anything from someone from their obscure crack ship between two cat characters. Likewise, do not use my opinions on cat shipping to reinforce any type of shipping-based harassment, which I didn't realize was a thing in the warrior cats community before my last video, because shipping warrior cats in the first place is meaningless, silly business, and no ship we as a fandom can make up will ever be worse than the authors themselves pairing up first cousins Pebbleshine and Hawkwing in a clan where they could have introduced any number of obscure kitty pet characters for free. To be fair, I am only taking one ship per person on my Patreon server, and also I'm going to try not to go over any ships that I talked about last time, if I can remember which ones I did last time. Gwen's ship is Nightstar and Running Nose. I've, never thought about this one, actually, but I'll take it. Two old men that belong together, and there's nothing in the way of it either. Donnie's ship is Sunbeam and Shadowsight. I guess I can kind of see it. She does confide in him a bit towards the beginning of River. Plus, it's hard to ignore a ship between cats named Sun and Shadow. That's pretty immediately fun. That said, if we're going to be shipping Sunbeam with someone who isn't Nightheart, I'd prefer it be Lightleap over Shadowsight. Goat Boy's ship is Applefur and Poppy Frost. Definitely a strange one, but it can work if you place it in Omen of the Stars, where the cats are about the same age. Applefur was a Dark Forest trainee, which might also make it interesting. Maybe hypothetically you could, for alternate universe purposes, replace Breezepelt with her as the cat who stalks Poppy Frost to the moon pool. And she changes her mind because, you see, Poppy Frost is so cool. Applefur also dies in the Dark Forest battle, so this could all be very tragic. Duplex Be Great's ship is Lightning Tail and Thunder. I don't really care for this. Maybe it's because Thunder is in it, or maybe it's because every time it comes up you do need to describe their dynamic in detail to people so that they don't think that they are siblings. Riddle's ship is Dustpelt and Firestar. This is a classic. I remember it was very popular because it was easy to just shift the story around so that Dustpelt replaces Sandstorm when they fill just about the same role. From the perspective of it happening later on, it's hard to say. Sandstorm and Ferncloud are very prominent, so you'd probably have to diverge more in the books for it to work. Alternatively, you could make this very silly situation where Squirrelflight, Leafpool, Spiderleg, Shrewpaw, and then all of Dustpelt's other kids are just a massive royal family under Firestar. Bloodhush's ship is Lionblaze and Berrynose. This is pretty much the ideal for both of them, actually. I think it could be very funny for them to just be in love after all that time trying to one-up each other. Plus, there's almost nothing going for either of them in their canon pairings, so it frees them both up really easily. With Berrynose especially, when it comes to Poppy Frost, I only see him as a source of angst at best. Meanwhile, it really seems like Cinderheart and Lionblaze both make each other less interesting by being around each other. So this one's kind of like solving two problems at once. Riverbranch's ship is Sunbeam and Lightleap, and this is the ship of all time. I don't care that Sunbeam is canonically obsessed with Nightheart, and trying to stop me from liking this is like saying that Mothwing and Leafpool can't be together because Leafpool loves Crowfeather. Lightleap should be in love with Sunbeam because it's funny, and Lightleap is funny. Crow-Ann's ship is Tigerstar the First and himself. Well, he definitely prioritizes himself over romance, but Tigerstar the First seems to be a bit of a romantic regardless, for whatever it's worth. No matter how terrible a boyfriend he makes, being romantically interested in others is a pretty unique trait for most Warrior Cats villains. I mean, not counting Ashfur, who's a villain because of his romantic streak, and Mapleshade, who's a villain because of her romantic streak, but Soul, Scourge, Darktail, Hawkfrost, there's little to no interest in romance from any of these characters, which is a pretty big chunk if you consider most Warrior Cats characters in general tend to be, romantically involved or interested at least at some point. So it makes him a little bit more unique compared to other villains, a little bit more three-dimensional when they seem like they have no lives outside of their plans, plots, and revenge. Sir Bob's ship is Fuzzball and Jayfeather. Very funny. This is actually the best Jayfeather ship now. I'm giving it a little award that says Best Jayfeather Ship. This unserious, goofy-looking ginger kitty pet warms Jayfeather's cold heart. Congratulations. Maggie's ship is Scourge and Ashfur. Very 2010 of you. I'm pretty sure that this ship was always just a meme, though. I can't imagine that anyone ever took it seriously. It's kind of like the whole Bramblestar has rabies thing. It's one of those fandom jokes that a couple years later people started thinking anyone was serious about. When no, it was definitely a joke from the very beginning. Egg's ship is Blossomfall and Berryheart. Well, while they're both the most conservative she-cats in their clans, I think even if they had solidarity in both hating outsiders, it would be kind of counterproductive to their beliefs for them to get together. Alpha's ship is Squirrelflight and Moonlight. I like this one. I might be responsible for this one. Squirrelflight, while with the sisters, is given a peek into another world, a little vision into another life. While she doesn't think she could live without Toms or live according to their rules, it would be nice to see her just take off. For Squirrelflight to leave ThunderClan and Bramblestar during Squirrelflight's hope, that's the best. Get out of there. Ross's ship is Tallstar and Jake and Quince and Nutmeg. I don't think I can see Tallstar as being with Quince and Nutmeg, just 'cause it goes against everything about Tallstar, but I can see it in like it's an open relationship, by the way, have you met my two girlfriends sort of thing coming from Jake. Quince and Nutmeg being together makes perfect sense, though. Partially because I think outside of a old article on the Warrior Cats app, not the new Warrior Cats app, but the old Warrior Cats app, might have been the only bit we've ever seen of Nutmeg, period. I always liked this one, although it has Alderheart in it, because I kind of like any situation where a clan cat falls for a fluffy, silly kitty pet type. Velvet is so ridiculous. She brings her toy mouse with her to ThunderClan. She's a silly little thing, and it's endearing for a cat to fall in love with a silly little kitty cat. Doofer's ship is Graystripe and Sandstorm, and I don't think this would work in a million years. I think Sandstorm would sooner beat him up, especially if he was, like, stealing Firestar's existing girlfriend or something. She would beat him up. She would just beat him up. JQ's ship is Dovewing and Briarlight. This one is cute. Dovewing does a lot to help and advocate for Briarlight and Dovewing's silence, so there's some backing, too. It's just too bad they don't actually talk that much. Dovewing doesn't have very many friends in ThunderClan. Louie's ship is Tallstar and Jake. It's canon. It's just real. Tallstar loves Jake. I wish they were a little bit more obvious about this sort of thing, though. While Tallstar and Jake is a lot more up in the air as to if or not it's real than something like Ravenpaw and Barley, and we're not really 100% sure if the authors intended it. When we do look at Ravenpaw and Barley instead, we do know that at least by Ravenpaw's path and Ravenpaw's farewell, that they did intend them to be together to some extent. Still waiting for them to use the word mates, though. Especially if they're willing to use it with characters like Finleap and Twigbranch, even though they're not having kittens, you know? What's the difference at that point? You can use the word. Use it. Do it. Crowsfart's ship is Darkstripe and Longtail. I'm not sure what I feel here. It makes sense enough, but it doesn't really compel me. I think two underlings of a villain can work and be interesting. I just don't think they ever pay much mind to each other. Bee's ship is Leopardstar and Sunfish. This one is great. I would be really all for this if Leopardstar's honor was, like, not such a weird, half-baked, half-finished, not fully edited book. And if Sunfish wasn't just a vehicle for Leopardstar to get attached to Whiteclaw, which is also annoying. I like it in concept, but if I think any deeper about it, I get upset about all the things they did with Whiteclaw in that book. Tanya's ship is Ashfur and Mapleshade. I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know. Mapleshade's character is all over the place. If Mapleshade would hate Ashfur or sympathize with Ashfur kind of depends on which Mapleshade we're talking about. Like, the earliest Mapleshade in Omen of the Stars, who attacks Sandstorm because she had a happy life in Kits, and she hates her for that, that Mapleshade would probably date Ashfur. And Mapleshade does make sense more in straight ships than she does in gay ships, as she's always had so much ire for other women, and she does seem to disproportionately blame people like Reedshine for things that Appledusk was definitely responsible for. But also, I don't feel like it would work from Ashfur's perspective, because for Ashfur to meet Mapleshade or have an encounter with Mapleshade, he would probably have to first be in his situation where he was in love with Squirrelflight, and from a perspective of character accuracy, once he's interested in Squirrelflight, I can't really see him breaking out of that. Any Ashfur ship that makes sense, in my mind, has to replace the Squirrelflight with some other cat, without, changing Ashfur's character entirely. So on this one, I think that Mapleshade is capable of moving on, but Ashfur isn't capable of moving on. Does that make sense? But this also has the same issue where, in a relationship, these characters would probably treat each other with the same bad behaviors that they treated their other significant others with. All in all, it seems like it would end with them killing each other. Blair's ship is Leopardfoot and Rosetail, which is something I definitely haven't thought of before. Do they ever speak to each other? It took me a minute, but they were alive at the same time. I am sorry, I looked it up. They do in fact speak to each other in Blue Star's prophecy. Good eye. This could be cute, especially considering Pine Star just leaves Leopardfoot alone when he takes off, and Rosetail is already a pretty lonely character. Moppy's ship is Tree and Molewhisker. Tree and Molewhisker. Molewhisker. Rule-oriented, rigid Molewhisker. Flexible, silly, bad at his job Tree. The real question here is which one of them would win over and change the other one enough that they can actually deal with them. Who has the stronger will between these cats, the more powerful spirit? Who will survive? Or will they cancel each other out and both become boring? Yeetacookie's ship is Mothflight and Sunshadow. Sunshadow does do a bit to comfort Mothflight and Mothflight's vision, and it would have been nice for anybody in the Moonshadow, Sunshadow, Tallshadow family had kits before dying horribly, but Mothflight couldn't be that cat due to the, plot of Mothflight's vision. Cedar's ship is Firestar and Firestar. This is the Firestar ship that current ThunderClan wants, I think. It also very well could have just been normal Firestar if Cinderpelt never told him that Sandstorm likes him. Bing Bing's ship is Thistleclaw and Goosefeather. I don't think Thistleclaw would give Goosefeather the time of day. He's too weird. Likewise, I think that Goosefeather is very aware of everything Thistleclaw is or has done, so wouldn't like him either. Arcjack's ship is Mothwing and Squirrelflight. Well, it's not something I have a problem with. They simply just don't work as well as the prominent and established Mothwing and Leafpool. Might work during the Broken Code, where Leafpool is dead and Mothwing is, willing to rip out Squirrelflight's claw for the purpose of making her bleed. Romantic. Ship is Brambleclaw and Ashfur. Never really liked this one. I think both of them, if in a relationship with another person, would treat them the same way they did Squirrelflight, and I doubt that Ashfur would be able to wrangle much power over Brambleclaw overall, too, so I think that Brambleclaw would just be the same, but instead of Squirrelflight, it's Ashfur, who already has a very unhealthy attachment behavior on top of everything, so I'm sure it would just make everything worse for him and Brambleclaw. Lancett's ship is Jayfeather's stick shipped with someone other than Jayfeather. Well, let me clue you into the truth. It's actually Rock's stick. Rock X Stick is a much more canon ship in the end. Moonerel's ship is Hollow Spring and Pounce Step. This is funny, actually. They should make it happen. It works fine, and it's exactly the kind of background pairing that they would actually make in the books. Unimportant background siblings together forever. Clementine's ship is Princess and Sandstorm, in a universe where Princess goes to the forest instead of Rusty. This is cute. I do wonder how it changes things for the first arc, though. Obviously, Princess can no longer have Cloudtail. Does she visit Rusty in his two-leg garden and receive Cloudtail from him, or do we have a weird version of the first arc where potentially Princess joins the clans pregnant or with her kittens from book 2? That would stir things up a lot while still keeping the Cloudtail arc intact. And we could say that maybe Sandstorm and Dustpelt were made warriors a little bit early in the fact that Graystripe and Firestar weren't there to be made warriors. Well, Graystripe would have been there, but you know what I mean. You know, I'd probably have a lot more to talk about if I did one of these videos, but I asked the patrons for their alternate universes instead. Mouse's ship is Rusty and Smudge. Not terribly interested in this. Smudge is just not a very interesting character to me. Maybe if we set it up so that Smudge leaves to bring back SkyClan and Firestar's quest, this could work. Star Hoarder's ship is Rowan Star and Leaf Star. I'm guessing from the brief plot beat in A Vision of Shadows when ShadowClan and SkyClan combine. I'm not sure if they would actually do well together, though. I'm really not sure what their dynamic would even be. Honestly, I'm not even sure what the dynamic between Rowan-Claw and Tawny Pelt is like. She's a lot more competent than he is, but he's also the leader of ShadowClan. It's bizarre. Raj's ship is Fringe Whisker and Spireclaw, which I've mentioned I like before, largely because Spireclaw isn't a completely uninvolved party and Fringe Whisker struggles against his mother. I can definitely see the Aaron's writing a version of this where we never even see the guy on screen despite everything that's happening involving him. Granted, he could be on screen more, but it's more than I would expect. And lastly, Sunny's ship is Berrynose and Birchfall. I guess the worst thing about this one is that it's less good than Berrynose and Lionblaze by a long shot. It's kind of like discount Berrynose and Lionblaze, but I guess it also works if you have no Lionblazes available. Birchfall overall is kind of a pathetic guy. He's not super capable, which makes him seem like Berrynose would be, overpowering him emotionally all the time. Like Berrynose ordering for Birchfall at the restaurant, that sort of energy. But I can see it working, and much like with the last Berrynose situation I talked about, they're both characters that make the respective character that they're with a little bit less interesting, especially Birchfall. Birchfall in White Wing is definitely a boring ship, and a really weird one, seeing as she should have been a warrior when he was, a baby. Anyways, that's Moon Kitty Judges Your Ships Part 2. And by your ships, I mean my patron ships. I opened up a little channel and had them put more in. Thanks for watching, and say good luck to Pepper. My Pepper ship is Pepper X getting surgery and the surgery fixes all his problems.